Good evening, everyone, and we're so delighted to have Peggy McGlynn here this evening, who's actually going to share her experience as a judge and go through the marking scheme, which is so important when preparing for this element of the Student Enterprise Awards, is actually the competition. So Peggy, delighted to have you here this evening.
Great, thanks very much, Caroline. So good evening, Caroline. Good evening to all the students and teachers who may be listening today. I've been judging for the last couple of years at the national final at senior level. So I think what we'll do is we'll take a look at each category, each area, and chat through what we believe you should be putting into your report in terms of the marking scheme. So will we start first, Caroline, with the product?
Okay, well, just to say that the marking scheme is available online. And it is not in your booklet, so just be aware of that because it can change. As we know, this year we have marks going for coping with COVID. So we're going to just show where it is. It's actually on the website, studententerprise.ie. Go down under your teacher resources, your general resources, and you'll see the marking scheme there, and very important to follow. Okay, then, Peggy, we'll start with the product.
Okay, Caroline. So yeah, I guess at this stage, you've already chosen your product or service and you're working hard on that. I suppose what we'd be looking for is that, if it's a product that you've had the skills to actually manufacture it, or if you cannot produce it yourself, that you might actually outsource it. And, to say whether it was cost effective to do the product yourself or to outsource it. What materials you needed to make your prototype and the length of time it took to produce. Did you do some testing on it? Did you actually speak to experts in that field in times of, helping you to validate it? Did they give you any advice in terms of changing your design? Were there any intellectual property issues indeed? Had someone already made this product and did you check that out? In terms of the intellectual property, I suppose if it's a service, maybe take a look at the service in terms of, is it something that's relevant to today's world? I know you've already started this, and what you've actually done in terms of maybe even packaging. That's very important as well. That you let us see that maybe in terms of the quality control, maybe you think of making a little video for the national final so we could actually see either the process in terms of production, or even if it is a service, how you've developed that, and even the distribution side to your customers as well.
Okay, and I suppose what students sometimes forget is you're just seeing this report for the first time, so that they have to really describe their product or service in detail, or perhaps that video or a photograph to show what it is. You often find, I suppose, times where students are saying how innovative it is, etc., and they don't describe what the main product or service is. That'll be very important. That's really, really useful. And also, we did have a night on intellectual property, so students need to be aware of that. In particular, the senior level students should know of that and apply it as well. I'm going to go on to the second element, which is very important as well, is market research, Peggy. What can you say about market research in terms of judging?
Okay, well, moving on then to market research, I think it's one of the most important things that you actually do, because what you need to do is identify your customers. You need to actually speak to them. I know you cannot go out and meet them these days because of COVID, but you actually need to do online surveys. You need to evaluate then the advice that your customers give you and actually implement it. We sometimes find that students, go off and they do a survey, be it online or otherwise, but they actually don't take the information that the customers have given them and, use it in terms of adapting or, updating their product or service. So that's very important. The customer is king, really. So you need to be aware of even meeting deadlines with customers as well. Maybe you can even set up some kind of focus or discussion groups and make sure that, your profile of customers, that you're actually talking to the right people in terms of who your target market actually is. What's your unique selling point here? And please do include graphs as well in your findings in terms of let us know as judges what basically who you've sold to, and that maybe you're selling outside your comfort zone. Now, again, I know that that's more difficult these days because of COVID, but maybe some online selling might work in that respect.
Okay, I think you said something really important there, Peggy, about students actually doing the market research, and sometimes they just put those lovely diagrams together and say this is what's said, but they didn't implement it. So there's still time for that. The county finals will be coming up. So if you came up with some kind of information, it would be really important that you actually applied it. And that leads us on to the marketing. Can you give us tips on marketing?
Absolutely. I suppose the marketing, what we need to really see is your marketing plan, folks. You need to make a plan from start to finish. Now, that plan may change. And I suppose, have you got a logo as well? Maybe you'd include that for us. Identify your competitors as well. Let us know who they are, that you've actually checked them out, because I'm sure there will be competitors out there, but that's good, to have competitors once you've checked them out and you see what they're actually doing. Are you going to do some leaflets, posters, business cards? Please do include photographs of all of those. Give us a sense of your product or service and maybe your passion for that. Social media, of course, is a great way to promote your business. So again, let us know the details of your website or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever social media platform you're going to use, because we'd like to check that, to be honest with you, ourselves before, as we're reading the reports. And again, the customers themselves can actually post reviews for you. Hopefully they'll be all good, but maybe you can run competitions online as well, and make sure that you follow your customers at the appropriate times maybe of the day, when it's a good time to do that. And of course, if anyone does help you to promote your business, make sure that you actually give them credit for that in your business report. I think that's very important if you've got any help along the way.
Okay, some really, really good points there. And interesting with social media, there's been a huge interest with students this year. I'm actually following a lot on Twitter, and the Student Enterprise are running a great Twitter feed there, and students are sharing their products and their ideas and trying to promote and sell. And it's interesting that you do actually check that up. So the importance of following that right through. We're going to come to the next topic, which we actually had in our live broadcast last time, and that's the finances. So
I suppose the important thing is that you actually budget how much money that you're going to need for your business. And I mean, you've probably started doing that already and keeping track and, keep records. But I suppose what we want to see really in the report is the income versus the expenditure. So we want to see the actual sales and the unit price, versus maybe forecast and projections. They're all good as well. But what we really need to know is that how you structured your price. Did you take into account the materials, the labor, the promotion of your business, and indeed the packaging? Did you finance the business yourself, or did you actually get some borrowings? I mean, that's all fine, but we'd like to know about that. Maybe you got some sponsorship indeed. Or did you actually ask customers to prepay for their orders? Include kind of charts and graphs on that for us, like a profit and loss account, a cash flow. Maybe there were fixed costs and then variable costs as well. And then, of course, on the unit price, you need to do a markup for the sales price and have a look at what your competitors really are, what their price is maybe in order to get to that level. But I suppose maybe a 10% markup would be where you should start. Sometimes it's very difficult if you actually price too low to bring the price up, but maybe it's easier if you've had a higher price to maybe reduce, or if you've maybe had stock that you haven't sold, that you could maybe sell that for a discount, stock on hand.
Okay, and we have some templates up online for the finances. We actually, for the cash flow forecast, we tell them to budget first and use the template and then put in their actual, and to know the difference between cash and profit. And as you said, the income and expenses and their costing and markup. And that's a really good tip, I think. Start high, and then you can reduce your price if you're going to have the January, February sales or Valentine, whatever. But really, it's very difficult, isn't it, really, to start low and then try and up your price from there. The next heading then, when you're looking at judging, a very important element of this is your actual personal development for the student. What advice would you give there, Peggy?
Okay, Caroline, I think the whole thing is, you know, when you start your business as a team or a sole trader, we would love to see the passion behind that, you know, the motivation. Why did you choose that product or service? You know, how did you resolve conflicts with your peers? We actually just love to hear the human story behind the enterprise, and maybe the best advice that you received from other people, or maybe even advice that you found online. And what would you actually do differently if you were to start all over again? What, you know, how would you, I suppose, change what you've done? What skills did you learn along the way? And I suppose the more important one is the plans for the future of your business. We love to hear that you intend to keep the business going into the future.
Okay, Peggy, and I think that's really important. You know, what would you do differently if you were to do this again? It's such a superb learning experience for the students. And interestingly, when you ask questions of the students, like what would you do differently, most of them would have put more work into it, or started earlier, or did things differently, etc. So there's a lot of learning there as such. A very important element of entrepreneurship is innovation. And there's quite a substantial amount of marks going for innovation. So students love to know, what exactly at senior cycle are you looking for in terms of innovation?
Okay, Caroline, I think this is a really good one, and I think the marks are 50 for this one. So as you say, it is substantial. I think maybe to identify, you know, what's different about your product or service, what's unique about it, what's your unique selling point. Maybe if you take a look around, you've seen a problem or an issue that you needed to resolve, and maybe you provided an innovative solution to do that. So maybe it's something that's already on the market, but you've tweaked it to make it better. Maybe it's a niche market that you've identified. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new idea, but I suppose what we're looking for is that you're as creative as possible and that you're thinking outside the box in terms of doing things differently. And I suppose in innovation as well, probably, you know, the packaging is very important, because it really can sell the product for you if you make it eye-catching and attractive. I actually think, you know, sometimes we go ourselves into a store in past times before COVID, and maybe we see something. We don't necessarily even want to buy that product or service, but the packaging is so nice that we actually, if we go in to buy one thing, we end up coming out with something totally different. So think along those lines and think outside the box in terms of innovation. That's my advice to you folks as students.
Okay, Peggy, so you can be innovative in different ways. And as you say, very few students are going to come up with completely new products or services, but it's really adapting it there is what you're looking for. And the importance of actually showing that what you're doing, maybe in terms of the packaging, as you mentioned, might be different. And people, it's by the ambience really more so sometimes than the actual product or a service. What about sales? Are sales really important, Peggy?
Yeah, you know, with sales, I suppose what we do know that the span from September until I think March is where most of the county finals take place. You know, the time limit is short there. So I suppose what we're saying in terms of sales, that definitely, you know, the whole competition is about developing a product or service and then selling it to customers. So you should show the levels of sales that you've generated. It's not necessarily maybe the highest sales that wins the competition, but you actually should be very clear on your actual sales and your unit price versus forecasts or projections. Sometimes there's confusion in the reports, you know, where the students have the sales that they've actually generated or the projections a little bit mixed up. So that's very important that you show the pricing and the sales, and indeed whether it was cost effective. Were there any hidden costs there? You know, did you turn the actual maybe stock on hand into sales and sell them with a discount. I mean, I know it's not easy to sell online with COVID at the moment, but maybe you could sell online if it's not easy to get your stock into shops, but maybe sell online in terms of social media platforms. I suppose the whole thing is just show us the difference between the actual sales generated and the projections for the future of the business.
Okay, so that would be really important in the report. The students say these were our actual sales, and then we hope to in the future with the projected sales to be very, very clear on that. That's really, really good. Okay, the marks are going actually for the whole structure of the business report. So could you give us a few tips on the structure of the report?
Sure, Caroline. I think on the business report, indeed, we're down, I believe, now to 6 headings on the report. So we're not looking for, like a 20-page essay here. What we would like is that the report is structured and very clear and concise. That you actually state the product or service that you're providing at the very, very start. The presentation is very, very important on this one. The layout should be very attractive and very easy to read. So make sure it flows. Don't write your report as a question and answer, but don't make assumptions either, but please don't be repetitive. So actually make sure it flows. Go through the different headings. Tell your story from start to finish. Again, give us the sense that you believe in the business and let us know the future plans for the business as well. So just take a look at the headings. I believe, Caroline, you're telling me the headings are on information for the students. So take a look at each heading and, be concise on each heading as you write the report.
Okay, and they're all available on page 54 of the student logbook there. So they're all there and all the different tips that go with writing the report. And there's kind of a little mind map there, how to go about writing your report initially. And I loved what you said, Peggy, about like telling your story and not just questions and answers and a very kind of code that it needs to be structured, but at the same time, it's your story that you're telling and a nice flow to it there. While the templates will help you write the report, when you're writing it, it's another different process, isn't it really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, if you've got any photographs that you've taken, or indeed if you are able to make a video, it's important that you include all of that, you don't make any assumptions that the judges know anything about the business. So, look upon it as if maybe get even one of your friends or one of your teachers or parents to read the report, because look upon it as if a stranger is reading the report. You know a lot about your business, but you actually need to tell us in the report as much information as you can, still being, pretty concise and structured in that way.
Okay, that's some really, really good advice there. And finally, for this year, to allow for the pandemic, what's been happening out there, there are marks going for adapting to the COVID-19 situation. So what advice would you give there, Peggy?
I think that's a very good idea to introduce that section, because obviously that hasn't been there pre-COVID. But I think it's, what we'd like to hear maybe is the difficulties that you have actually overcome because of COVID, or indeed any opportunities that arose, because, we're all living in a different climate here. So, how did you actually adapt maybe your product or service because of the COVID issue? Again, the human story behind that, what risks did you take and did they actually work? Because out there, certain sectors are doing very well because of COVID. Okay, they might be in, the pharmaceutical area or IT, or indeed some food companies have been very innovative. And, they've actually had to change their business and how they do business to develop the business in terms of COVID. So did you learn anything actually from those businesses out there? Take a look online and see if there are businesses in your sector and how they've adapted in these strange times that we live in. So I'm really delighted to see that section in there and that there's going to be some marks allocated. I believe it's 20 marks to that.
Oh yeah, and I think that is so important. And I suppose you've just given some superb advice there, Peggy, on the judge's perspective and how to help our students and teachers actually, deal with this, because there's been a lot of online learning and there's been, there hasn't been the same time. So just to say, get as much help as you can out there from the student enterprise coordinators in your school, your teacher, your parents, etc. And I often used to find, when I'd be doing the report with students, sometimes a good idea is to say, mark yourself on your product out of 10. How could you up that mark? And the same for your market research. Would you give you the full 20 marks? Maybe I might only get 10. How could I bring that up to 15? How could I bring that up to 20? And just push yourself that little bit. And just to say to all the students, you still have a chance. So make sure that you follow the superb tips that Peggy has given us here this evening. And you should be really prepared for the Student Enterprise Awards. Thank you so much, Peggy.
Look, I'm delighted to be involved in the programme again, folks, and I'm looking forward to seeing all your reports. I believe it's going to be April time, and to reading them. I really enjoy doing this every year. And, I'm so impressed each year as to, how good the products are, obviously, and the services. Obviously, it's not so nice that we can't meet you all, but hopefully we'll all be back in Croke Park or wherever for the national final in 2022. So good luck to everyone, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your reports and reading your reports in April time. Thank you so much, Caroline, for this evening.
Okay, not at all, Peggy. Thank you for all your advice.
Take care.